Okay, so with that, my name is Matt Ngawajo. I'm an national program leader for the organic program here at NIFA. And I would just want to say welcome to this technical assistance webinar, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us today. We have a couple of things to cover right here before we start. If you are not yet muted, please go ahead and mute your mic. And also, we will be using two acronyms a lot in this presentation. One is OREI, which is Organic Agriculture Research and Extension Initiative. You will also see a lot with reference to NOFO, which is the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And again, at this time, we are asking you to refrain from asking questions during the presentations. And the reason is that we will do our best to anticipate all the questions that we usually receive on this program. So with that, let's get started. My name is Matt Ngawajo. I will be presenting with my colleagues, Dr. Amber Campbell and Catherine Bonnet. I am from the plant system. Amber is from the animal system, and Catherine is from the plant systems. So next slide, Catherine. Okay, these are the topics that we will cover today. A quick overview of NIFA, overview of the OREI program, some application details, the evaluation process. We talk about a couple of tips to make you successful for this program. Then we will end with additional information, including the ERA system that we are using this for the first time this year. So next is NIFA overview. Next slide, Catherine. The National Institute of Food and Agriculture is the extramural science funding agency within the USDA Research, Education, and Economics mission area. We invest in and support initiatives that ensure the long-term viability of agriculture. NIFA provides not only funding, but also strategic leadership for programs that ensure all the results from their investigations will end up with the people who can apply those results. Next. And now let's move to this specific program. What is OREI about this year? The purpose of this program is to seek to solve critical organic agriculture issues, priorities, or problems through the integration of research, extension, and education activities. And the purpose is to fund high priority integrated projects that will enhance the competitiveness of producers and processors, and this is important, who have already adopted organic standard. We mean those who are already operating with an organic certification. Next. This year, in 2026, we have 7 priorities for the program that serve as a roadmap for the program this year. Those 7 priorities are laid out with all the details in the NOFO in part 1, section B. So here I'm not going to get into the details because you can always get those from the NOFO, but I'm just going to give you the highlights of each of those 7 priorities. Priority 1 focuses on conducting advanced on-farm research. And those could be for crops, or for livestock, or for systems integrating both crops and livestock. And the focus should be not only on production, but we also include marketing. Priority 2 is focusing on putting in the hands of extension personnel or any other professional who advise producers the tool that they need to be efficient. So it's about extension. Priority 3 is everything related to post-harvest handling, processing, and food safety practices. A project focusing on those aspects will fall in our priority 3. Priority 4 is all about what we call organic crop propagation systems. This includes seeds and transplant production, as well as protection and plant breeding for organic production. And we want to clarify that the emphasis for this should be for publicly available releases. And here I'm going to stop a little bit because we receive a lot of questions on what do you mean publicly available releases? We do not mean free releases. And at the same time, if you think that your intellectual property needs protection, put that in your data management plan that we will discuss a little later. Next slide. For priority 5, I will summarize it in terms of pest management. Anything that has to do with disease, nematodes, weeds, and insects problem in organic system will fall in that priority. Priority 6 is more about animal production and protection. So anything that you are doing for animal-based systems production, animal health, or pest management practices for animal system will fall in priority 6. And finally, priority 7 is breeding for performance in organic system. So animal breeding for performance in organic system. So those are the 7 priorities that we are working with this year. I know many of you will ask the questions. We have 9 last time that we offered this program. What happened to the 2 priorities that are not in this NOFO? Do not submit a standalone proposal on any of those priorities that have been terminated. However, those activities could be a part of an integrated program. An example will be the curriculum development. That used to be a standalone priority. It is not anymore, but that could go into an integrated program. Next. Okay, another question that we receive a lot from our applicants is, am I eligible to apply to this program? These are all the conditions, but let me summarize them, very quickly. If you are a US citizen or you are submitting your application on behalf of a US entity, then you are eligible to apply. And this includes for-profit institutions and non-profit. So basically, we have a very broad eligibility for this program. Next slide. Also, we receive a lot of questions from our applicants asking us, can I submit a proposal to OREI and then submit the same idea to AFRE or to the beginning farmer, to other programs? Our answer is no. You cannot submit the same idea, same objective to multiple programs at NIFA in the same fiscal year. However, if you submit to a program, you are declined, you can then take that idea and submit to the next program, but not at the same time. When you do it at the same time, both applications will be declined. We also receive questions about how many applications can my institution submit or myself as a PD or co-PD, how many applications can I submit? Our answer is there is no limit. There is no limit to the number of applications that you can submit. But in general, our advice is focus on winning and do not spread yourself thin. By working on so many applications, you may end up having very good application for all of them, but your goal is to win, to get an award. So focus on winning rather on the quantity. Next. Okay, the type of project that we are accepting this year, we are really more focused on integrated project this year because we really do not want to have a standalone research or a standalone extension. So focusing on integrated. And the type of grants, this is new this year, we are offering workshop grants. We will continue with our planning grants and also our standard grant. What is the details on those type of grants and projects? You see that in the next slide. So if you're looking for a workshop grant project, see here, we are not saying conference project. The word conference, we are not going to use it. Those conference grants have been discontinued. You are not going to see any of those from our agency this year. However, we are funding workshop grants or proposal. Those are proposals that will support workshop or symposia that bring together scientists and others, including end users like farmers, to identify research, education, extension and outreach, needs, as well as update information on organic agriculture and advance our understanding of organic issues and problems using a systems approach. So many of you will ask me, what is the difference between this and our traditional conference? A traditional conference grant was just convening a meeting where you go and give presentations, and that was it. This is going, even further, trying to get more from those meetings. Next slide. Planning. This is another area where we continue to offer planning grants. Very few NIFA programs offer planning grants. And our planning grants are different from seed. So planning proposal provide assistance in the development of future OREI proposals that require multi-regional or regional coordination. Those proposals are encouraged from applicants who clearly show limited resources for submitting large grant applications. For those who can articulate anticipated benefits from the proposed planning activities. And also we need to see some evidence that the resulting OREI application will have a high probability of success. So this is not an opportunity to offer fund for people as a seed grant. It's really to help develop those large grants if you do not have the capacity to do it right now. Next. And then our typical, research with extension or education grant. Again, as you will see in the NOFO, we want to include research first, and then on top of research, you can add either education or extension or both of those other functions. But the key thing is research plus any of the other two functions. We have heard from the organic community that not everyone is able to put together a $3.5 million proposal. And that is the reason why we started a tier system to accommodate program that differs in scope. For our tier 1 proposals, these are the largest proposals that require a coordinated project addressing critical issues that will cut across multiple regions. For that program, we usually require an advisory panel to help guide those proposals. The tier 2 projects are the one with a maximum budget of $2 million. And we require those to be multidisciplinary also, and also address issues that could be really more relevant, both at the national and regional level. And tier 3 project up to $1 million, those are the projects that will address specific critical constraints, possibly with a very narrow scope, and maybe limited in terms of region. Again, we receive a lot of questions. How do I determine whether my project is a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, other than the budget? Our answer is we in our panel do not count the number of states collaborating on your project. We do not count the number of disciplines. We do not count the number of PI or PDs. However, our advice is to design your project, the best project you can think of, then look at the activities, and then from the activities move to the budget, and then the budget would dictate whether your project falls into tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. There are commodities that are not grown in the entire country. If you're doing a project on coffee, we cannot ask you to have 10 states collaborating on that. That is the reason why we do not count the number of states collaborating on those projects. So first, look at the scope of your project, and then the scope of the project will dictate your budget. So with that, and all those projects will be reviewed together with the same budget. We do not set aside a specific amount for tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3. And another thing that I have received a lot is don't try to put a smaller budget thinking that the project will be more competitive because you are only requesting 50,000 or 100,000 instead of 3.5 million. It's usually we don't waste our time on the budget during the review process. Next slide. Okay, we also know that many people have been contacting us about another program that we have called the Organic Transition, ORG, and asking whether their project would fit here or in that other program that has not yet been published. This program, the OREI, as we said before, has some significant overlap with that other program, Organic Transitions, because they all focus on production efficiency. They all focus on improving the profitability and the competitiveness of the organic industry. Anything that is in there will overlap with those two programs, but this specific program, OREI, is focusing on operating organic systems. That is where having the organic certification is critical, because we want results that will be directly applicable by farmers. Next slide. Okay, another area where we receive a lot of questions. And I was looking at my note today. Can I use funds from this program to buy some land to grow organic, or to buy a piece of equipment, or for construction or renovation, or to go and train people internationally on how to grow organically? Or can we get assistance directly to producer, give money directly to producer? The answer to all that is no. There are other programs within USDA, maybe even within NEFA, that can fund those activities, but by law, we are not allowed to fund those activities within the framework of OREI. Next. Another area that requires that we're getting a lot of questions on is the matching. The matching requirement is set by Congress. And for this program, Congress require a dollar for dollar matching. You request 100,000, you have to match 100,000. At the same time, Congress gave us two criteria where the matching requirement can be waived. The first criteria here, because everything is in the RFA, in the NOFO, I'm not going to read it because you can go in your NOFO and read that. But to summarize it is if results of your research will be applicable to other agricultural commodity or to agriculture in general, yes, then you qualify for a matching waiver. The second condition here is if you are working with a minor commodity, your topic is a scientifically important research, and you are unable to provide the matching, then you can also make the case that you qualify or make a request for a matching waiver. We do not use the matching as part of our scientific review. We just don't want to penalize people. Now, how do you request a matching? If you qualify for any of those two criteria, add in the narrative of your project or in the budget justification a paragraph that you can call request for matching waiver and clearly outline the reason why you are asking for that matching waiver. And to my knowledge, everyone that has done a good job of justifying that received a matching. But we at NIFA, we cannot pre-approve that language. So don't send the language to us to approve it for you. But if you do a good job, it will be approved. Next. Okay, on this, I will pass the baton to my colleague, Catherine Bonner. Catherine, please introduce yourself before starting your section.
Sure. My name is Catherine Bonnert. I'm a program specialist at NIFA, and I've been here a little over 5 years now. And I will dive into the application details and documents. Just a couple of changes from the previous year in relation to your applications. We are now moving into ERA with our Grants Modernization Initiative. We are adopting that system. So all applicants must register with this system, ERA, prior to application submission. Organizations must designate at least one signing official and one project director in ERA Commons when submitting an application. And for additional information, please refer to these links, and they should be clickable because I'm presenting within Teams. So you should be able to get directly to those resources. Also, we have a change in the biographical sketch and current and pending support forms. The templates are now going to be through Science CV. They have, they're able to generate the biographical sketch and current and pending documents through that program. And there's a link to that as well, so you can generate your forms. Detailed instructions can be found in the NIFA application guide. And now I will jump into the different grant types that we are offering this year for OREI. And note in the top right corner, highlighted in green, you will be able to find this information in each NOFO according to where it is. For workshop projects, you can link directly to that announcement with that hyperlink. Application deadline is 5 p.m. Eastern Time, May 14th, 2026, and applications must be submitted through grants.gov. The total funding available for workshop projects And FY26 is $450,000. And the program classification code is D113A. And the maximum award amount is $75,000. And there are no restrictions on the number of applications per institution nor awards per institution. For the planning projects, here's a hyperlink directly to the announcement that you can read all about it. And the application due date is 5 p.m. Eastern Time, May 14th, 2026. All applications must be submitted through grants.gov. The total funding available in FY26 is $550,000. The classification code is the same, D113A, and the maximum award amount for planning projects is $50,000. Again, there's no restriction on the numbers of applications per institution nor awards per institution. The next one is the research projects with either extension and or education components. And this links you directly to the NOFO that you can see that there online, the hyperlink. Application date, they're all the same, May 14th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2026. Again, you must submit through grants.gov. The total funding available in FY26 is $65 million. The classification code is D113A. The maximum award amount is $3.5 million and no restrictions on the number of applications per institution nor awards per institution. Now we'll go into some of the key documents that must be included in your application. The project summary or abstract, project narrative, bibliography, reference list, the data management plan. There may be some other documents, but you can see the NOFO as well as the NIFA grants application guide if you click on that link. So the project narrative is limited to 7 pages for workshop and planning grants and 21 pages for the research projects, and this will be strictly enforced. We'd like you to use a 12-point Times New Roman font for the text, and don't use anything smaller than 11-point font for figures and tables. And the tables may be single-spaced. And within these pages, they're listed in the NOFO are the headings that are required in the narrative. And it includes impact on research, training infrastructure, extension, outreach, and how to achieve the goals, cooperation and institutional involvement, and a project timeline. Any applications exceeding the page limitation will be returned without review. The data management plan for research projects with extension and or education components. So investigators must provide detailed up to 2 pages business and management plans that include the following: expected data type, data format, data storage and preservation, data sharing, protection, and public access, and the roles and responsibilities. This link is very helpful at the bottom. It gives you more information about the data management plans as well as the frequently asked questions. And for application submission, NIFA only accepts electronic submission of applications. Here is a link to the NIFA grants application guide that's available. The application documents must be importable document format PDFs to be accepted by NIFA, including your narrative and budget justifications. Grants.gov may allow other formats, but unfortunately our system does not. Do not use third-party PDF builders, and do not protect your PDFs with passwords. Moving on to the application evaluation process. Amber?
Okay, hello. I'm Amber Campbell. I am a national program leader in the Division of Animal Systems, and I am Matt's second on OREI. And I'll be covering the evaluation process and some tips for success. Okay, so a broad overview of the evaluation process. Once you submit an application, It comes into our system and it is screened administratively to make sure that it meets all the criteria listed in the NOFO that are required in order to be accepted for review. Once it's accepted for review, we'll assign each application to at least 3 reviewers. Those reviewers will read through the entire application and each of them will write an individual review of the application and its strengths and weaknesses. Then the whole group of reviewers for every application in the program will get together in what we call a panel. At that panel, they'll discuss each application and they will talk through the strengths and weaknesses they saw in those applications relative to our evaluation criteria. From that process, the panelists will determine a final ranking and rating of each of the applications within the pool. Next slide. So what exactly are those evaluation criteria? We give all of the details of this. They're basically a full paragraph for each of these in the NOFO. So reference that section or part 5, section B of the NOFO for detailed criteria. They're slightly different for each of the different NOFOs within OREI, but the broad criteria are the same. So the first is justification of the planned activities. So how well does the application explain the need for the work that you want to do and how it will benefit organic agriculture in the United States? The second is stakeholder involvement. So how well is your proposed work going to engage with stakeholders and have them involved in the process to make sure that what you're doing is of value and beneficial to them? The third criteria is the conceptual adequacy and approach. And so this really gets into sort of the details of the science. So does the way you plan to do the work make sense? Does the framework you've come up with for understanding the problem align with the scientific research that's been done in the past and our reviewers' ability to understand what it is you actually want to do? Does your approach make sense? Do the methodology and experiments you plan to do align with how that's normally done or should be done within the scientific community? All of those things in terms of does it have the scientific rigor necessary for research projects, or does the way you're going about a planning project or a workshop make sense? The fourth criteria is about commodity relevance and potential impact. So is what you're doing relevant to commodities that are produced using organic agriculture in the United States? And how big is the potential impact? So does your project have the potential to have dramatic and positive effects within the industry? The fifth criteria has to do with the qualifications and the planning and the adequacy of your facilities. So in terms of project personnel, do you have people with the expertise on the team that are needed in order to conduct the work that you want to do? Do you have a project management plan that is clear and articulates how you're going to go about your project and to make it successful? And do you have access to the facilities necessary to do the work that you want to do? A key one that Matt has already mentioned is access to that organically certified land so that you can conduct experiments on those. Next slide. In terms of the timeline of competitive programs, this is basically a year-long process for us. We just keep going through it. But in the first 1 to 3 months, basically, is when the NOFO is released. And then there's the application writing and planning and the application due date. So we're right in this first section that NOFO has been released and we are waiting on the application due date, which, as Catherine mentioned, is 5 p.m. on May 14th. Please make sure that you submit your applications on time so that we can have them within the review process. After the application due date, that is when we go into that second phase where we have the application peer review and funding decisions. So that's when we conduct that whole process of having peer experts review your work and decide which are the most meritorious, and then we make funding decisions. That takes about 5 months generally. So that will be during that period between your application deadline and about September. And then at the very end of this process, generally in the 8 to 9 month range, that's when awards are finalized and made. So that involves an actual grant award being made from NIFA to your institution or to you as an individual if you're applying as an individual. But so in general, this process takes about 6 to 9 months from the application due date before you hear anything about the results of your application. And we realize that that can be sort of frustrating or require a lot of patience because you put all this work and effort into submitting an application and you really want to know if it's getting funded. But we really do appreciate your patience during that process. It's really important for us to make sure that it's as as thorough and as unbiased as possible. So we'll let you know when you can expect to hear, but until then, just hold tight and we will get you a funding decision as soon as we reasonably can. Next slide. Okay, now in terms of tips for success, I'm going to go through some of the tips for success, and these apply to all NIFA programs, not just to OREI. And so things to consider. The first thing to consider is your topic appropriate for this program or is there a better program? I realize it can be tempting to just try and submit a project to any program that's currently open, especially when we have, there's a limited number of funding opportunities that are open at any time. It really will save you and your team, as well as NIFA staff and reviewers, a lot of time if you make sure that whatever you want to submit a proposal on, you submit to the right program. Submit to the program that has the best fit. Even if you have to wait for a NOFO or you have to, wait for the next funding round, it's better to submit to the best fit program than to submit to a program that happens to be open when you have the idea. And then you want to make sure that you're eligible to apply to the program. For OREI, that eligibility is pretty broad, as Matt covered. Basically, if you are a person in the United States submitting from a U.S. institution, generally you're eligible to apply. Do you understand the requirements of the NOFO? We say this a lot, right? All the answers to basically every question are in the NOFO. So make sure that you've read through the NOFO and you understand all of the requirements, all of the documents needed, everything that your project needs to do in order to be successful under that notice of funding opportunity. Then, are you familiar with the application review process? Hopefully you have a general familiarity because I just reviewed it. There are also some additional details, again, in the NOFO to help you understand how that review process works and how your application will be evaluated. Then, do you have all the needed resources? Do you have the matching? Do you have the qualified team? Do you need to find someone to be on your team because you need qualifications or experience that you don't have in order to be successful? And can you manage the project? So thinking through all of those things before you get started writing. In terms of tips based on this is write clearly and logically, organizing all of your documents according to the NOFO outline or evaluation criteria. Make it as easy as possible for reviewers to review your application and see how it meets the criteria in the NOFO and can be successful in achieving the objectives that you've stated. Prepare your budget with a strong justification. Again, follow the guidelines of the NOFO and your budget will be judged on its degree of reasonableness. As Matt said, we don't really get into the minor details of your budget, but submit a budget that's reasonable and makes sense given the scale of what it is you want to accomplish in the proposed work. Obtain critical input from experienced and successful colleagues. So if you know someone who submitted an application to OREI and has been funded, that's a really good place to start. Catherine, I think, will be giving you some instructions on how you can see successful OREI projects that have been awarded in the past. But getting critical, constructive feedback and criticism from your colleagues can be really, really helpful in terms of helping you see gaps that you couldn't see yourself in an application. Then make sure you fill out all the forms completely and correctly. I hate seeing bad science not be reviewed or be reviewed poorly because they didn't have all the forms submitted that they needed to have submitted for the application to be reviewed. Also, make sure that you use tables and figures to help you illustrate important points. Sometimes a picture really is worth 1,000 words. You can get a lot of information conveyed through a figure or an illustration that might take a lot of text to explain. So it really can be a more effective way to present your science and what it is you want to do. And then finally, write for both the expert and the novice. We have a broad range of expertise on our panel. All of these people have expertise within organic agriculture. That's why we selected them, but they might not have expertise in what exactly you want to do. So you want to make sure that you write in a way that anyone who is at a level of expertise that they would be on our panel can understand what you want to do, whether that's, you need an animal scientist to be able to understand your plant-based project, or a plant scientist to be able to understand your animal-based scientist. So you want to make sure that you write in a way that is scientifically accurate, but is easy to understand and really conveys the importance and the structure of what you're planning to do to anyone who could possibly be on the panel. Next slide. In terms of your planning checklist, I personally love a checklist. So this is how I go about or how I went about submitting and writing applications before I joined NIFA. So it's a really complicated process. There are a lot of steps, and you want to make sure that you have a strategic approach to going about this. So you'll want to prioritize your efforts throughout this process. You want to locate the appropriate program. You want to assemble the right team of people to do the work that you're considering. You want to create a timeline for actually getting it done before the application deadline. You want to make sure you've completed all the required forms and registrations. So you'll need to be registered with STAM. If you're at a institution, it probably is already registered, but you will want to double check and make sure that it's registered with STAM for a unique entity identifier. You'll want to make sure that you're registered with ERA. Again, that may or may not be true at your institution, but it needs to be the case before you submit your application. So it's really good to make sure you start those steps early and make sure that your institution is registered, or get them to register as soon as possible so they can create accounts for you and all of your co-PDs before the application deadline. And then do also have things set up in grants.gov. So you'll need all of those in order to submit an application to the OREI program. Then making sure that you've completed all of the required documents, you have everything in the right format, and everything has been edited and converted to PDF and is ready to go, and then that you submit it on time. Again, all of those deadlines are 5 p.m. Eastern on May 14th. And we mean 5 p.m. Eastern. Anything submitted at 5:01 or later is considered late and is not accepted for review. So you want to make sure, at least I personally like to have things in a couple of hours early. I like to have some buffer time. You don't want to get into a situation where, lags or internet connections become an issue and your application doesn't get in, because then you do have to wait for a whole year roughly for the next NOFO to come out, right? So it's until the next funding cycle if you don't get things submitted on time. Next slide. In terms of the document checklist, so each application has a series of different documents that are listed in the NOFO that are required. And you want to make sure that you have a complete and accurate application package, right? You need to make sure the reviewers of your application have all the information they need in order to understand your project and what you're planning to do, and to see it as worth doing, and suggest that we fund it by ranking it highly based on its merit. So you'll want to create a list of all of the documents that you need, and it's a really good idea to actually create a checklist so that you can mark those off as you go along and keep track of them when you're submitting documents to the system, so that you know for sure that every document that is required as part of your application has been submitted. And I think I'm handing it back to Catherine for additional information.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I will describe a few additional information resources that are available. And this is what Amber was talking about before. It is the NIFA reporting portal, and I've created a link to the previously funded OREI awards. And so you can look up information and see what has been funded in the past. And it's a good resource to get to be familiar with the program and see what has been done before. And here are a few other resources. The top one are the open and closed. You can search for either funding opportunities on the NIFA website. And then we have a competitive grants flowchart that takes you through the point of submission and the process of what NIFA does with your application all the way through to awarding. And then the NIFA grant training technical assistance resources. There's a website for that has all additional information there. Then the NIFA policy guide, indirect cost information, and then the NIFA grants application guide are all of those links that are shown on the screen. And now we have just a couple slides since ERA is new this year, and make sure that everyone is familiar with how to apply using that new component of ERA. So in the past, you can see on the left, we had just one program that had accepted multiple grant types. And then it was all submitted under one, it was an RFA, so request for applications. And then we went back into the back end and sorted everything out and went and made sure the right review criteria was with the right grant type, and that's kind of how it flowed. Now with ERA, each grant type that has separate criteria is its standalone NOFO. And those NOFOs, the Notice of Funding Opportunities, are related for the certain program. So we have 3 for OREI, the workshop, the planning, and then the standard research grants. So each one of those, you need to submit to the correct one, and then that follows through submission and goes to the right review criteria and everything like that. Then it's on its separate path, but it's all related to one program. So that's just a little explanation of the structure. And here are the actual new application process. Just 3 easy steps. Just adds a little bit of a new layer on how you're going to submit. So step 1 is create an ERA Commons account. So this is done through your organization. They need to register. Can take a little bit of time, so we suggest getting a start on that as early as you can. Then when they register, they need to designate a signing official, the SO. And that SO then creates PD accounts for all the researchers who are applying for a Notice of Funding Opportunity. So since OREI is so broad, and basically anyone can apply even as an individual if you're a US citizen. So if someone serves as both a PD and the signing official, you're going to need to set up separate accounts, one for each role. And then for those of you who are already working, submitted grants through NIH, you probably already have an ERA Commons account. So you just need to verify your account is active, correctly affiliated with your institution, and that your signing official role is already assigned. So just a few things there. Step 2 is actually applying via grants.gov. So you, just like you have in the past, you find the Notice of Funding Opportunity at grants.gov, complete application forms following the NOFO instructions. And it's important to enter your UEI, which must match the ERA Commons registration, specifically in section 5 of the form SF424. So make sure those numbers match your ERA Commons registration. And then it's very important that you enter your PD ERA Commons username in the credential field of the research and related senior key person profile. So on that key person profile form, under the PD section that you fill out for yourself, that you need to make sure that you have your ERA Commons username in there. The PD username is required by ERA, but grants.gov unfortunately won't flag it as missing if you don't enter it. And without it, your application cannot be linked to your ERA Commons record, and then you'll get an error message. And then step 3, tracking in ERA Commons. So you're going to log into ERA Commons status module. You're going to look for your recent pending e-submissions, and then make sure that you confirm an accession number has been assigned. And then if there are any errors, promptly address any of those quickly via the original application. Don't fix it in ERA Commons. The applications with the errors will not move forward. So grants.gov confirmation is not your finish line. After submitting, you need to log into ERA Commons and check that recent pending e-submissions. Look for the accession number. That's going to be your confirmation that the application cleared both rounds of validation and will move forward. So if you don't have an accession number, that means there's more errors that you need to fix. Then here's a little, Amber's talking about all those great checklists. We have another one for you for how to make sure your ERA related information is set when you apply. So might be a little late here before your program publishes its NOFO, so jump on this pretty darn quickly. Confirm your organization is registered in ERA Commons. Identify your signing official, make sure their account's active, and then ensure all the active researchers have ERA Commons PD accounts. Then when you're applying, that UEI number on the SF424 has to match your ERA Commons registration. And then enter your PD ERA Commons username in that credential field on that key person form. And make sure you submit early. Fixing those errors can unfortunately trigger others, so don't wait until that deadline. And then after submitting, make sure you check grants.gov for agency tracking number assigned. Confirm an accession number has been assigned, and then continue monitoring your status module as it moves through review. So that's one nice feature of ERA. She'll be able to monitor your application through the whole process. So, let's see what else we have. Is there anything else, Matt or Amber, you wanted to add to the ERA explanations?
Okay, I was muted here. Thank you. I'm sorry. I think you covered it very well, Catherine. The only thing that I can think of adding is please do not reverse those steps. Do not start by applying in grant.gov and then going back and trying to register an ERA. You have to first have an ERA account before you submit in grants.gov. Otherwise, those things would not link very well. And before we go, I think Catherine has our non-discrimination statement here on the screen. I know all of you will receive a copy of this presentation, and our non-discrimination statement is very critical. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but just wanted you to know that the USDA, its agencies, offices, and employees and institutions participating in or administering USDA programs are prohibited from discriminating. That is very critical to us. So please, when you get your slide, go back and take a look at our non-discrimination statement. With that, I think we can open up the floor. Oh yeah, this is our contact information with our individual email addresses and cell phone number. But if you want to send a question to all three of us, use the program mailbox, which is at the bottom of that slide. It will go with all of us three. We will be able to see that. So before we get in the Q&A, this is the time for you now. If you need some clarifications, But before we get in those, I have been looking at the chat box, and let me try to address a couple of them. I have a question about the mentoring plan. Yes, it used to be a requirement in our program. In this NOFO, the mentoring plan was not put in the NOFO, but we strongly recommend that you include a mentoring plan if you have students in your project. If that is not included, because again, we cannot penalize you for something that was not in the RFA, every award would need to submit that document. I also have a question about the duration of the different projects. That is included in the NOFO. So if you look at key program information, that is where you will see the duration of planning or workshop or standard integrated project. So planning and workshop are one year, and then the integrated project are 3 to 5 years. But again, the authority for this program maximum is 5 years. So no matter what you do, we will never, even with no cost extension, we will never exceed 5 years with OREI program. So with that, I'm not seeing the chat now. Anything else that some people are raising? Yeah, and also I see a question that we receive a lot in our team. You know, we do not have a certified organic land, but we are doing everything following organic certification. Our answer is it is not organic based on USDA unless you have that organic certification. So even if you're doing everything following organic certification, the only way for us to say that you are following organic standard is to show that certification. Now, another question was, how about land in transition? For this specific program, for the organic transitions program, which is not yet published, land in transition makes sense because the program is about transition. Here, we are working with fully operational, operating organic farm. So you could still use in some specific cases land in transition, but it has to be justified by your objectives. But as a general rule of thumb, this program is for certified organic farmers. You know, results need to be applied directly. Any? Yeah, the question was, can we share the slide? Catherine, how will you say with that one?
Yes, we will. After we get the recording processed and everything like that, we will send a notification to all of the registered participants, and then we'll be able to share all the information.
Okay, I see another question here. Can costs related to farm use be charged to the project? Absolutely, yes. We want you to work with farmers. We want you to pay them for using their facilities. And we also want you to compensate them when they are working with you on your experiments. That is usually seen as a very good thing in our panel.
Matt, there's one for the matching requirement. Does the dollar for dollar basis mean in-kind matching is not allowed?
Yeah, the in-kind matching is allowed. Let's say you are working with a farmer and that farmer is willing to give you a piece of organic certified land, and they can put a value, a dollar value on that. They can have you set up your plot, do things. So in-kind support is accepted for this program. And are all tier projects eligible for cost share waiver? All projects, yes, are eligible.
There is no supplemental information form in grants.gov as noted in the NOFO. So where should the conflict of interest document be uploaded? And there is no place to enter the program and program code. So I think for the program code with ERA, you're applying for that. I don't know. I don't think that is quite important anymore.
No, I don't think
As long
things
as you
like
have that
conflict.
funding opportunity number.
Yeah, things like conflict of interest and any other document. I have received a lot of questions about that. You have a letter of support, you have things like it should all be attached as other document in grants.gov. Many of those things do not have a formal form to input your document. So just develop a document yourself and convert it into a PDF, like Catherine said, and then attach as other document. And then again here, one question was, are nonprofit eligible? We cover that and we say yes, they are. And regarding equipment purchase, is specialized equipment for test plot also prohibited? No. If you have a key, you will look at this program, we have funded things like a roller crimper, some seeder thing. If that piece of equipment is critical for the research and you are not able to rent it somewhere, then you can make the case that it is an essential piece of equipment for the project.
There's one about should we include a minority serving institution document for HBCUs and other MSIs?
Can you repeat that again, Catherine? Can we?
Yeah, so should we include a minority serving institution document for HBCUs and other MSIs?
I don't think we are requesting anything specific or special for any other type of institutions. But if you're attaching that type of document, it should be applicable to any other institution.
Is the USDA changing the layout of their NOFOs? I can access the guidance document, but I can't find Part 4C document that explains what needs to be in each document and how many pages each document needs to be. Is the project management plan what is usually recognized as a management plan? For example, with the project management plan, I cannot find what needs to be included.
Yeah, again, my answer would be you have noticed it. We are changing the layout of our NOFOs as opposed to the previous RFAs. The NIFA guidance is still the same. And I'm sure many of you are not yet familiar with this new format. I would say myself, I'm still learning about the new format, but usually before you think we don't have something in there, please take the time. We just talk about people asking for the duration of the project, how long, and it is right there in the NOFOs. So make sure that the version that you have, you can search through it, but more importantly, read. We are moving to this new system. It is way more powerful than what we were using before. We know we have a couple of documents like the project management plan. We don't have a form for that. You are just asking you to provide, how you're going to manage your project. Even the data management plan, we have some guidelines for you, but we don't have a form that you are going to fill just like the project summary. And if there's a document that you think is important, just attach it as other document.
Then we have a ERA specific question about PDs and co-PDs must have ERA Commons accounts, but just wanted to clarify that an ERA Commons account is not required for other senior key personnel.
And I'm going back to that, Catherine, I know you cover that. We receive a lot of questions from, universities have no problem, but nonprofit, people asking us, that nonprofit is just myself. And Catherine, you say it very well. That person will have to register as an organization for their nonprofit, as the SO, and then they will have to register again as the applicant. So they will have two accounts, one as the SO for that nonprofit and another account as the applicant. I just want everyone to know that we have our colleagues from ERA here on the call, on the webinar. And if there's anything that they think we are not doing right, they will jump in. So they are here if any of you have an ERA related question. And here again, do applicant need to include a mentoring plan? I think I already addressed that. My answer was yes. Any other new question that we can see here?
Yes. Can we do a complex part of the proposal at a university experiment station because it is challenging to design and maintain in a commercial farm?
We also fully understand that there are specific situations where you may not always have, the design of the project itself may not accommodate going on farm, or you have some sort of proof of concept that sometimes doing it on farm may compromise the certification of that farmer. If you make that case in your proposal, the panel will entertain that. So there are situations where sometimes you have to do some activities in the lab or at the experiment station. We fully understand that, but the project alone should not be based on those activities outside of the organic certified system.
When doing an integrated project, is there a percent that needs to be research versus extension?
No, the answer is no. However, if you were doing an R3 project, it will be a completely different thing. So this is not an R3 program. We do not enforce any proportion going toward research, extension, or education.
For the outcomes from previous awards section, do you only want us to include awards from the OREI program or other relevant awards that demonstrate productivity and expertise with techniques and system, for example, SCRI funding or AFRI funding, unrelated themes?
No, we quickly realized that asking you to provide that information based on everything else that you have worked on would be pretty demanding. So we are limiting this to OREI project and the organic transition, which is the other sister program. So only for those, because those are pretty specific programs that are addressing the need of the organic industry. So a project that you did with SCRI, even if that was organic, would not fit in that requirement.
Not, okay.
Yeah, and I'm seeing one here. Can you compare organic system and conventional system for specific outcome that seek to differentiate added values? The answer to that question is at the very beginning of this program, if you go back and look at a lot of projects that were funded by OREI and the organic transition, many of them were comparing organic and conventional, testing these specific production practices in organic and conventional. After some time, the entire organic industry basically decided that the goal of organic is not to compare itself with conventional, but to look at itself as a system, as a whole system. Because of that, the industry discouraged us from funding comparison between organic and conventional. But I will say there are still some topics where you need to demonstrate a proof of concept, in which case you may still use things that are not organic, but that will only be for a proof of concept, not to compare systems.
Matt, did you answer the one about priority 5? Maybe not.
Which one?
In priority 5 of this NOFO, it is stated that proposals addressing organic management of diseases, nematodes, weeds, and insect pests in the southern region are especially encouraged. Could you clarify whether similar proposals from other regions may be at a disadvantage during the evaluation process?
Thank you, Catherine, for reminding me about that question. No, you saw our non-discrimination statement there. We basically just trying to stimulate applications from those regions because, again, we know diseases and insect problem are problematic in the southern region, and yet we had not received a lot of application from those regions. We are just stimulating applications, and during the review process, there is no advantage. If we were to give an advantage to a project coming from a region or an institution, I think our administration would be very mad about us. So we don't do that, and we have never done it. So once the project get to the panel, they are all reviewed by the panel, regardless of which region they are coming from, which topic they are discussing. It's all about science at that time. Anything else that?
Yeah, I don't know if Andy wants to clarify this. Do senior key personnel need to have an ERA Commons account? They're conflicting answers from different discussion box.
Yeah, sorry about that. They see people listed on the senior key persons page do need ERA Commons accounts.
Can you repeat again so that everyone knows?
Everyone listed on the senior key persons page does need an ERA Commons account.
Perfect. Thanks, Andy. That's Andy who's working with the ERA team and leading our transformation office, changing to the ERA system, our new cool system. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions. That's why we organize these technical assistance webinars. And that's why we try to summarize all the questions that we have received since the publication of the NOFO during our presentations. That was part of the reason why we didn't just follow what was on the slides, but we also went a little bit beyond what was on the slide to cover those questions.
There's a recurring question. Can farmers be paid from OREI project money? You said at one point that producers cannot be funded. Specifically, can farmers be paid for training materials in a project?
I think my answer was yes, and we all encourage that. Many of us have been before coming to NEFA were on the other side where we were competing for the same program and we were working with the same farmers and submitting applications together. So it is always a good thing to make sure that not only farmers, your co-PDs are receiving something for their participation in the project. Why not do the same thing for farmers? Amber, you have some clarifications.
Yeah, I think the distinction earlier you said that just paying, providing a benefit to farmers was not allowed. And so I think the distinction is, are you providing participant support to farmers in order to encourage them to offset their cost of participating in your work? Because that is allowed. You can't just
Exactly.
give farmers money, that's not allowed, right? But if you are offsetting their costs of participating in your work, that is within the allowable costs.
And you say it very well, Amber. So we are not going to substitute ourselves to other programs that are compensating farmers for losses for other things. Here it's about the project, and each team member on the project need to be compensated for their input and their activities.
The 2026 NOFO does not describe program evaluation. Is this not required? If needed, can we use an internal evaluator?
Okay. Yes, that is another question. I don't think was clear enough. This maybe I need to clarify it for everyone who is listening. We used to require, and we continue to require, a project management plan for the large award. Project management plan. We require it this year. In the past, within that project management plan, there was a requirement to have an external evaluator. That requirement for an external evaluator was dropped in this NOFO. That does not prevent you from putting in something like that to strengthen your project. If you think you will make a better case to the panel by showing them this is what we do, and by the way, we have someone else that will be observing and providing some advice to our team. It will only be a good thing for the project, but that is not a requirement this time. Okay. Looks to me that we have covered everything.
Do we include a farmer as a collaborator or member of the advisory board?
Absolutely yes, and actually encouraged because we are doing all the research for farmers. Having them as a part of the team will only be a good thing.
I think the question though is which one should they be? And to that, my answer is it depends on how the farmer is engaging with your project. If they're collaborating with you on the research, they're a collaborator. If they're serving with other individuals on an advisory board, then it's an advisory board. So it's kind of a case by case question of if there's no flat answer of farmers should be in this category.
Thank you, Amber. That is so well said. Yeah, it's just not just farmers, anyone that is participating in your project. If don't put a co-PD, someone who cannot lead the project in case you are not available. That's just an example. A co-PD, for instance, should be someone who should be able to take over the project. Don't put someone as a key personnel just because you want to add their name. No, it has to be relevant and applicable to that specific project. And on that, I would say also, we do the same. Sometimes we have farmers participating on our panel, depending on their qualification and willingness to serve. Okay, anyone, any other question that we have not addressed?
There's one, is RNAi, in parentheses, dsRNA with organic carrier materials considered organic?
That one is pretty technical. And the way we address that, we will ask the person we're asking the question to get in touch with us directly, because that is really not a general question. Sometimes we may have to go back to our colleague with the National Organic Program and NOSB to make sure that that technology is allowed. So, but in the meantime, you could also check with your organic certifier, ask them, if I'm doing this, I'm using this technique, will you certify my facility or will you certify my product? That's another way of double checking. But get in touch with us.
Matt, have you answered, what does a successful advisory panel look like for a tier 1 proposal?
Oh my, that's a tough question because again, each proposal is completely different, right? You can take something that is really outstanding for one proposal and drop it in a completely different proposal and it becomes irrelevant. So what we will say is just make sure that the people that you are working with are relevant, are needed to achieve the goal of that project. And make sure that you are working also, make sure you include the end users of your research, farmers, or if sometimes even consumers. But we do not really have a recipe for something that would be like a one size that will fit everything.
Let's see. If a proposal is relevant to ORG, maybe a little more relevant because the topic's directly mentioned there, do you recommend waiting and not submitting here? Because you mentioned overlapping proposals may be considered duplication.
Exactly. You cannot submit to both programs. Really, you cannot submit here and then 2 days later, 6 months later, if ORG is published, you say, oh my God, I'm going to resubmit here. It's a better fit. No, you cannot do that. But at the same time, we are all sitting here. We cannot tell you if and when ORG could be published. But like Amber was saying, you better apply to the program that is the better fit for your ideas. Because if the fit is not there, the proposal will panel well, but to go over that finish line, you might not be quite ready at that time. So my personal advice will be go for the program that has the best fit. But at the same time, I will also, before we leave, is you can also always ask us to withdraw a proposal from one program. That is another option. If you were to submit to one program and then later realize that, oh no, I got a better program, get in touch with us. We can withdraw the first application before you submit to the second program.
Okay. If we have a fresh cut and post-harvest facility that is BSL2 certified that can be used for both organic and conventional, would that be the primary distinction needed?
Not sure I got that correctly. Yeah. Can you repeat that one more time, Catherine? That
If we
way.
have a fresh cut post-harvest facility that is BSL2 certified that can be used for both organic and conventional, what would be the primary distinction needed?
Well, if it could be used for both, the distinction would just to basically demonstrate that you have that authority to do organic in there, and to do that, I'm sure you have some sort of documentation or some sort of certification that you could share in your application to document that.
Matt, I
The
think we
thing
should.
is that, yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm moving on to the next one. Go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is that we want you to make the strongest case for your application and not let the panel, doubt. Anticipate those questions that the panel will have. Are these people allowed to do organic product in their facility? Anticipate that, and don't let the panel guess. Show the documentation to prove that yes, you can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
And then going back to the supplemental information form, it looks like that NIFA no longer requires that one. That talks about the program code and all that stuff. So that
Yeah.
one we don't need that for.
Okay.
Checking out.
Okay. Looks like I'm not getting any more questions here. And we are at the end of our time. So with that, I will say thank you for everyone who has participated in this webinar. Thank you to our colleague from NIFA, from ERA, and thank you for all those who join us today. We are looking forward to receiving your application, and get in touch with us if you have additional questions. Thank you.